In this final question, if you know the relationship between factors of a polynomial and the zeros of the polynomial, this question quickly becomes pretty simple. Now, the answer key for this new PSAT provided by the College Board has a secondary solution to solving this, which I find completely confusing and overdone. So I'm not going to bother showing that to you. I'm going to show you the shorter, more direct way, which I believe the answer key does show you, but I want to explain it in detail here just so you can see where it comes from. So x minus 2 is a factor of this, where b is a constant. What is the value of b? So essentially what this means, if you remember from our previous episode on factors, is that when I take this polynomial and I divide it by x minus 2, this is going to come out equally. It's going to divide in equally with no remainder. So one way to think about it is that this guy up top must be some product of factors, right? Such that this factor x minus 2 cancels this, and we're left with some factor that's unaffected by this, right? So the final answer would be whatever that factor is. And this is actually where that secondary solution goes in that the College Board shows you. I'm not going to go any farther than this, just to say that it's the basic idea we saw before. This factor has got to cancel out a factor in the numerator if this is going to be divisible. But we're going to go another route, which is to remember the relationship between the factors of a polynomial, factors of a quadratic, such as this, and the zeros, or the roots of that function. So if this guy is indeed the product of the factors x minus 2 and we'll say x minus a, what this means is if we set this equal to 0, we're going to get two roots. One of those roots is going to be x equals 2. So that when you plug in x equals 2 into this, what should happen? Well, the function, or the quadratic, should equal 0 when you plug in x equals 2 into that equation, right? So what you have to remember is that when you're given a factor like x minus 2 or x plus 3, that along with that, here's your factor, along with that comes a 0 of the function, or a root of the function, right? X equals 2 is a root, so that when you plug it in, you get y equals 0. So if I gave you x plus 7 as a factor, x equals negative 7 is a root. And now what this means is if we take x squared minus bx plus b, and if we plug 2 in for x, it should equal 0. And now we have something we can solve. So we're going to get 4 minus 2b plus b equals 0. So negative b, or 4 minus b, is equal to 0. So b is equal to 4. And that's it. And if you wanted to check, you could. So here's kind of going back to the previous episode, multiple ways to solve it. Once you have the answer, you could check to make sure it's actually consistent. So if b is 4, our quadratic would be x squared minus 4x plus 4. And notice if I factor this, if I unfoil it, x and x, two numbers that multiply out to 4 and add up to negative 4 is minus 2 and minus 2. Notice, boom, there we go. In fact, not only do we have one factor, which is x minus 2, we've got two factors, which is x minus 2. So if I go back to where we started in this video, we said x squared minus bx plus b. It's got to be divisible by x minus 2 if x minus 2 is a factor of it. We now know that this top is actually just x minus 2, x minus 2. In the scenario where b is 4. And now indeed, this x minus 2 factor can cancel, let's say, that one. So we're left with x minus 2, which means it is indeed divisible, which means this is a factor, and it's all consistent. So knowing that relationship between divisibility, factors, roots, and zeros, all that stuff is very important for some of these advanced questions. If you understand it, it's actually not that hard of a question, even though this one would probably be ranked as one of the hardest questions in the section. To learn more about Reason Prep's SAT, SAT subject test, and ACT video courses, go to reasonprep.com/enroll, and you can find the link in the description below the video.